I never imagined my life could flip upside down so quickly. 1 minute, I was minding my own business, walking through the door after a long day at work, thinking about what to make for dinner. Maybe pasta, maybe something simple. And the next, my entire world shattered. And it wasn't like the typical stories you hear about. It wasn't some dramatic affair uncovered by a slip of the tongue or a misplaced text. It was far more subtle, more insidious, and it caught me completely off guard. It all started with a casual remark, a sentence tossed out like it was nothing, yet it was everything. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, when she said it. Samantha had just come into the living room after a long day, her tired eyes still carrying the weight of the office. I was half focused on an article I was reading, half aware of her walking past. Then, she just blurted it out. "God, I can't stand your face right now. It's too much, Harold. Your clinginess is suffocating me." I didn't even look up at first. Maybe I didn't want to. I told myself, she's tired. She didn't mean it. But then I heard the sharpness in her voice again, like a razor cutting through the air, and I realized she wasn't joking. She was serious. I looked up, fully expecting to see a slight smile, a glint in her eyes that would say, "I'm messing with you." But no, there was nothing like that. Her face was a mask of coldness. "Did you just say that?" I asked, barely believing my own voice. She stared at me, her lips curling slightly in a look that wasn't quite a frown, but it wasn't a smile either. It was something between irritation and detachment. She didn't speak at first, as though weighing whether she even wanted to explain herself. "Yeah, I'm tired, Harold. You're always up in my space, hovering. I get it. You care. But it's too much now. I need my space." It stung more than I wanted to admit. I wasn't a clingy person. At least, I didn't think I was. I gave her room to breathe. But that statement, it felt like she was tearing a piece of me away, like I wasn't even worth her time. She turned away, as if the conversation was over. But I was still there, frozen in the moment, struggling to process her words. I didn't ask anything else. I knew better by then. I had learned over the years not to press her when she was in one of these moods. But the words echoed in my mind, relentless. "Your clinginess is suffocating me." It was like a shadow, hanging over me every time I tried to focus on something else. Over the next few days, I noticed the change in her. She wasn't just pulling away emotionally. It was more subtle, more deliberate. Little things, like her constantly checking her phone, or how she'd snap at me over the smallest of things, became more frequent. And then came the weekend. She'd been talking about going out for drinks with some friends from work. I wasn't sure why I felt uneasy about it. Maybe it was just my gut telling me something wasn't right, or maybe I had been conditioned to expect the worst. But I didn't say anything. After all, she was entitled to have a life outside of me, right? She left around 8 p.m. I stayed at home, occupying myself with chores, trying not to overthink it. But around midnight, something inside me shifted. Maybe it was the silence in the house, or the feeling of loneliness creeping up on me. I grabbed my jacket, telling myself I wasn't going to follow her, but I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I needed to know where she was. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I drove to the bar where she was supposedly meeting her friends. It wasn't far, just a 10-minute drive, but by the time I parked across the street, I already felt like a fool. I told myself to turn around, to go home. This wasn't me. I wasn't a spy. But something pushed me to get out of the car. I crept around the corner, my heart pounding as I approached the entrance. I stayed back, peeking through the window. And that's when I saw her. Samantha wasn't sitting with a group of coworkers like she had said. No, she was with him. The guy from the office. The one she had been texting a lot lately. The one I had tried to dismiss as just a work friend. But there they were, sitting together at a dimly lit table, laughing. Laughing in a way I hadn't heard her laugh in months. The kind of laugh that had nothing to do with me. The kind of laugh that was shared between two people who were more than just friends. I didn't know how long I stood there, paralyzed by the sight in front of me. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. All I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat, loud in my ears. They weren't just talking. She was touching his arm, leaning in. And that's when I realized the truth. It wasn't just a work friend. It was something more. Something I had been too blind to see. And in that moment, I knew everything had changed. But I didn't walk in. I didn't confront her. I just turned around and walked away. Quietly, carefully. Like a man who had just witnessed the end of everything he thought he knew. I didn't tell her what I had seen. I couldn't. The truth was, I wasn't sure what I would have said if I had confronted her right then. I wasn't ready to face the reality of what was happening, or maybe I was just too scared to admit the truth to myself. I'd spent years building a life with Samantha, and now, in the span of a few minutes, everything felt like it was crumbling away. I wasn't one of those dramatic types who would make a scene. I wasn't even the type to cry. But that night, as I sat in my car, trying to control my breathing, I felt the full weight of betrayal. It wasn't just the laughter I had heard. It was the look in her eyes, the way she touched him, the way she forgot about me, about us. The next morning, she came home as if nothing had happened. She walked in the front door, smiling like she always did, as though her absence the night before was just a normal thing. As though I hadn't just witnessed something that shattered everything I thought I knew about her. I had planned to ask her about it. I had rehearsed the conversation in my head a dozen times. Who is he? Why did you lie to me? Why didn't you tell me the truth? But when she walked in, all that came out was a simple, hey. She barely looked at me, rushing into the kitchen to grab some coffee, as though I wasn't even there. I stood frozen in the doorway, my hands clenched into fists. I knew something had changed. I knew I couldn't just go on pretending like everything was fine. But still, I kept my mouth shut. She looked up from her cup of coffee, catching me standing there. "What's up?" she asked, her tone casual. Too casual. For a moment, I didn't answer. I just stared at her, my heart beating faster with every passing second. Then I spoke. "You went out last night. With him." She blinked at me, her expression unreadable. "Him? Who are you talking about?" "You know who I'm talking about," I said, my voice shaking now. "The guy from your work. The one you were laughing with. The one you've been texting." Her face immediately stiffened. She put down her coffee, crossing her arms over her chest. "What exactly are you accusing me of, Harold?" Her voice wasn't angry, but it wasn't soft either. It was controlled, cold. "I'm not accusing you of anything," I replied. "I just want to know what's going on. What's happening between you two?" She sighed, running her fingers through her hair, and I could see the frustration building in her. "It's nothing. Really, it's just harmless. You're overreacting." "Harmless," I repeated, incredulous. "I saw the way you were looking at him, Sam. I saw the way you were sitting with him. It wasn't harmless. It wasn't just friends." There was a long silence. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't how I thought this conversation would go. I was expecting a fight, an explosion, but instead, it was like she was closing off, shutting me out even more than she already had. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean for it to go this far, Harold." Her words were quiet, and for the first time in a long while, I saw a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. But that flicker was quickly replaced with a wall. She took a step back, her arms wrapping tighter around her body, as if she was trying to protect herself from what was coming next. "I don't know what you want from me," she said, her voice shaking now, just a little. "You never listen to me. You never understand when I need space. And now, you're accusing me of things I didn't do." I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside of me. "I'm not accusing you of anything, Sam. I'm just trying to understand what's happening between us. What happened to us? What happened to the connection we used to have?" She shook her head, her eyes narrowing. "You don't get it, do you? I'm not the one who changed. You are. You've become clingy, needy. I can't breathe anymore. I'm drowning." Her words hit me like a slap across the face. "Drowning," I repeated, my voice trembling with hurt. "I'm just trying to be here for you. I thought that's what a marriage was about. But I guess I was wrong." Samantha didn't respond. Instead, she turned away from me, walking out of the room like she had done 1,000 times before. But this time, it felt different. It felt final. I was left standing there, alone with the bitter taste of betrayal in my mouth. I had no idea what to do next. I was angry. I was confused. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I just stood there, my mind racing with all the things I should have said, should have done. But it was too late. I tried to move on with my day. I made breakfast. I ate lunch. I went through the motions like I always did. But I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was changing around me, that something was happening that I couldn't control. That night, when she came home late again, I didn't say anything. I was done asking, done trying to fix what seemed to be beyond repair. She didn't even acknowledge me. She just walked past me and into the bedroom, shutting the door behind her. And that was when it hit me. She had already made up her mind. She wasn't coming back to me. She wasn't the same person anymore. And neither was I. The days that followed were filled with an eerie silence. Samantha and I lived in the same house, ate at the same table, but it felt like we were living in two separate worlds. She came and went as she pleased, and I stayed locked inside my thoughts, wondering how we got here. There were no more casual conversations, no more lighthearted jokes. She had distanced herself so much that even being in the same room felt like a chore. I tried, of course, to break the tension. I suggested we go out, to dinner, or even for a walk. Anything that could bring us back to where we were before. But each time, she found an excuse. I'm tired, I have work to do, or simply, I'm not in the mood. The excuses kept piling up until they became too loud to ignore. She wasn't just tired. She wasn't just busy. She was pushing me away, and I was too afraid to face it head on. Instead, I found myself waiting for something to change. For her to wake up and realize what was slipping through her fingers. But nothing changed. It was during one of those evenings, when I was sitting in the living room, barely able to focus on the TV, that I felt it again, the familiar sting of loneliness. Samantha had just walked into the room, her face set in a mask of indifference. She didn't look at me when she passed by. She didn't say a word. But I noticed something that made my stomach churn. Her phone, always within arm's reach, was glowing. A message. She glanced at it for a split second before walking into the kitchen, but I saw the name. It was his. Mark. The guy from work. The guy who had started this whole mess. I couldn't stop myself. I stood up, my heart hammering in my chest as I walked to the kitchen door. I wasn't going to ask her about it. Not yet. But I needed to know. I needed confirmation that I wasn't imagining things. That I wasn't just being paranoid. I waited for her to get engrossed in whatever she was doing before I quickly grabbed her phone from the counter. It was the kind of move I hated myself for, but I was desperate. My hands shook as I unlocked it. The first message I saw made my blood run cold. Mark, can't wait to see you tomorrow. Dinner's on me, just like old times. Winky face. I didn't know what hurt more, the words themselves or the realization that I wasn't the only one she was thinking about. Old times. The way she used to look at me. The way she used to make me feel like I was the center of her universe. Now, she was giving that same attention to someone else. Before I could read more, I heard footsteps behind me. My heart dropped. I quickly shoved the phone back into its place on the counter, my mind racing as I turned to face her. What are you doing? Samantha's voice was sharp, cold. She had caught me. I wasn't doing anything, I stammered, trying to compose myself. But the guilt was eating me alive. I had invaded her privacy. I had crossed a line that I couldn't take back. But in that moment, I didn't care. I needed answers. Who is he? What's going on, Sam? She stared at me, her eyes flickering with a mix of annoyance and something darker, something I couldn't quite place. I told you before, Harold. It's just a friend. Someone from work. I shook my head, trying to keep my emotions in check. A friend? Really? You're texting him like that, making plans behind my back? I saw the way you looked at him. I saw the way you smiled when you were with him. Don't lie to me. She didn't say anything for a long time. The silence between us was unbearable. I could hear my own breathing, the loud thumping of my heart in my chest. And then, slowly, she spoke, her voice quieter now. Maybe I am lying. Maybe I've been lying to you for a while now. But it's not what you think, Harold. It's complicated. Complicated. I repeated. I was losing control. I didn't want to yell. I didn't want to lose my temper. But it was hard. So hard. What's so complicated about it? You've been cheating on me, Sam. Haven't you? Her eyes widened at my words, but she didn't deny it. She didn't yell at me or try to justify herself. Instead, she just let the words hang in the air, heavy and suffocating. I don't know what you want me to say, Harold. Yes, I've been seeing him. Yes, I've been confused. I don't feel the same way about you anymore. I've been trying to find the courage to tell you, but every time I look at you, I just see someone I don't recognize. I don't know when it happened, but I've changed. I felt the world tilt beneath my feet. Everything I thought I knew about her, everything I believed in, was being torn apart in front of me. She had been so distant, so cold. I had asked, I had begged for her to tell me what was wrong, but she had kept it hidden, allowed it to fester, to grow into something more than I could have ever imagined. Is it over with him? I asked, the words slipping from my lips before I could stop them. She didn't answer right away. Her silence spoke volumes. But then she met my eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I saw something that resembled guilt. No, it's not over, and I don't know if it ever will be. Her honesty, as painful as it was, felt like a slap across my face. But it wasn't just her words that were cutting deep. It was the realization that everything I had thought we shared, the life we built, the love I thought we had, was nothing but a lie. She had been hiding this from me for who knows how long, and I had been too naive to see it. In that moment, I knew something had to change, but I also knew it couldn't be me who changed anymore. I couldn't keep fighting for someone who had already given up on us. And that's when I decided. I was done. I wasn't going to stay in a marriage where I was a stranger to the woman I loved. I wasn't going to beg for her affection or her attention. And so I left. I didn't wait for her to beg me to stay. I didn't need her to. Because deep down, I knew it wasn't love I was holding on to anymore. It was fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of what I would have to face if I walked away. But as I packed my bags, something inside of me shifted. I wasn't afraid anymore. It was time to move on. I didn't look back. I couldn't. As I drove away from the house, from everything I had known, there was a sense of finality that washed over me. It wasn't just the act of leaving that felt final. It was the realization that I had been living in the dark for too long, that everything I had believed in had been nothing but a fragile illusion. But as the miles stretched between me and that house, the weight of it all seemed to lift. I didn't feel relief exactly, but I felt lighter. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying the burden of someone else's choices. I wasn't tangled in the web of lies and deception. I was free. I stayed at a motel that night. A cheap, dimly lit room that smelled faintly of stale air and cleaning products. It wasn't where I had imagined myself, not at all. I had always thought if this day ever came, if Samantha ever broke me like this, I would have some grand plan. I would go somewhere beautiful, somewhere I could reset my mind, my heart. But there I was, alone in a dingy motel room, staring at a television that didn't work properly, with nothing but my thoughts to keep me company. The next morning, I had breakfast in the small diner attached to the motel. The food was greasy, the coffee weak, but I needed something to fill the emptiness. I tried not to think about her. I really did. But everything reminded me of her. The way the waitress smiled at me, the way people laughed in the corner booth, it all made me realize that I had been stuck in a cycle for far too long. I wasn't living. I had been existing. And now, it was time to change that. I didn't know what came next. I didn't have a plan. But what I did know was that I couldn't go back. Not to her. Not to the life we had built. There was no going back after that. No matter how much it hurt. No matter how much I missed her touch, or the sound of her voice when she would tell me she loved me. It was gone. She had taken it with her when she chose him over me. And now, I had to find a way to take back my own life. I spent the next few days just existing. I didn't call her. I didn't try to contact her. I knew deep down that anything I said would be a futile attempt to cling to something that was already lost. So, I focused on myself. I went to a gym for the first time in months, worked out until my muscles ached, just to feel something other than the sting of betrayal. I read books. I ate meals alone. I spent hours walking around the city, just taking in the sights and sounds, trying to remind myself that I was still alive, that I could still feel. But the hardest part wasn't the loneliness. It wasn't the empty nights in the motel room or the quiet mornings with no one to share them with. The hardest part was facing the fact that I wasn't the man I used to be. I wasn't the man who had spent years with Samantha, who had built a life with her, who thought they could grow old together. I was someone else now. Someone broken. Someone who had been left behind without even a second glance. And then came the message. It was a text, just a simple message from Samantha. I hadn't expected to hear from her again. In my mind, I had already closed that chapter. But here it was, her name flashing on my phone screen. I hesitated. My finger hovered over the screen for a long moment. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to leave it unread, to prove to myself that I had moved on. But the other part of me, the part that still loved her, the part that had been hoping for some kind of closure, opened it. The message was short, almost clinical. It read, "I need to talk. Please meet me." I didn't reply immediately. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to say. After everything, what was left to say? But as the hours passed, as the silence grew heavier, I knew that this wasn't going to be easy. I had already left her once. But now she was asking for a conversation. And something deep inside me told me I couldn't just walk away from this. Not without hearing her out. I met her the next afternoon at a small cafe on the edge of town. The kind of place that had an old-world charm, with mismatched furniture and a faded sign that had seen better days. When I walked in, she was sitting by the window, her back to me, staring out at the street like she was lost in thought. The same woman who had once been my entire world now felt like a stranger. She looked up when I sat down, her eyes red-rimmed, like she hadn't slept in days. But when she saw me, there was no smile. There was no warmth. Just the emptiness of someone who had lost what they couldn't get back. "I didn't think you'd come," she said softly, her voice tinged with both relief and uncertainty. "I didn't think I would either," I replied, my words coming out colder than I intended. "But here we are." She sighed, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "I've been thinking about everything. About us. About everything I've done. And what it's cost me." I raised an eyebrow, waiting for her to continue. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine for something, anything that might have been left. "I never wanted to hurt you, Harold," she said quietly. "I didn't realize how much I was pushing you away. And then, I didn't know how to stop it. I couldn't stop it." She paused, taking a shaky breath. "Mark, he wasn't supposed to mean anything. But he did. And I don't know how to fix what I've broken." The words hung between us, heavy with the weight of truth. But the truth didn't bring peace. It didn't bring closure. All it did was reopen the wounds I had been trying so hard to close. "I don't know what you want from me, Sam," I said, my voice softer now, but still laced with the pain of the past weeks. "You can't just undo what's been done. You can't just ask for forgiveness because you're feeling guilty. This isn't about that anymore." She nodded slowly, like she had expected that answer, like she knew what was coming. But it didn't stop her from trying, didn't stop the tears from falling as she reached out for my hand. "I love you, Harold," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I've always loved you. But I was lost. And I don't know if I can find my way back to you. I don't even know if I should try." And in that moment, I realized something. It wasn't just her that had changed. It was me too. And no matter how much I still loved her, no matter how much I wanted to believe that we could fix this, I knew it was too late. There was nothing left to say, nothing left to fix. As I sat there in that cafe, staring into her tear-filled eyes, the weight of it all hit me in a way I hadn't expected. I had spent weeks, no, months, wondering if there was a way back to her. I had clung to the belief that maybe, just maybe, she still felt something for me, that we could rebuild what we had. But as she sat there, crying and apologizing, I realized something far more painful. It wasn't just about fixing what had broken between us. It was about accepting that it couldn't be fixed anymore. The years we had spent together, the late-night conversations, the vacations, the simple moments of laughter and love, felt like a distant memory now. And in its place was this stranger sitting across from me, apologizing for things I didn't even know how to process. "I loved you, Harold. I always did," she whispered again, almost as if she were trying to convince herself more than me. "But I lost myself somewhere along the way, and I didn't know how to get back. I didn't know how to come home to you." I felt my chest tighten, the words she spoke barely registering in my mind. What did love even mean anymore? How could love feel so deep, yet be so easily abandoned? How could she stand here, telling me she loved me while knowing that she had given herself to someone else? It felt like betrayal wrapped in a lie, and no amount of tears or apologies could take that away. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Sam," I finally said, my voice rough and unsteady. "I don't even know if I want to. You've hurt me in ways that I can't just forget, no matter how much you regret it now." She nodded, a bitter look of realization crossing her face. "I don't expect you to forgive me, Harold. I don't even think I deserve it. I just needed you to know the truth. The whole truth. The truth. That's what it all came down to, wasn't it? The lies, the deception, the distance between us. It had all been built on a foundation of truth that was never fully acknowledged. But now, as the truth lay bare before us, I couldn't help but wonder if it was too little, too late. Maybe it had always been too late. I stood up from the table, feeling an overwhelming urge to leave. The conversation had gone as far as it could go. There was nothing more she could say that would change anything. "Sam," I said, my voice more steady now, "I don't hate you. I can't. But I can't be with you either. I'm not the same man I was when I walked into this relationship. And I'm not the same man I was when I first walked into that house. You've changed. I've changed. and there's no going back. She didn't stop me as I turned to leave. I expected her to grab my arm, to beg me to stay, to say something that would make me want to stay and try again. But she didn't. She just watched me walk away, and in that moment, I realized that she had already said goodbye. I had already said goodbye. I didn't look back when I walked out of the cafe. I didn't want to. I didn't need to see her face anymore, not right then. The weight of the conversation was enough to last a lifetime. But there was one thing I couldn't shake. One thing that had followed me out the door, lodged deep in my chest. The feeling of emptiness. Not the kind of emptiness you feel when you're alone. No, this was different. This was the kind of emptiness that came from losing something you had spent years building, something you thought was permanent, something you thought you could count on forever. The kind of emptiness that made you question everything you had ever known. I spent the next few days wandering, trying to drown out the noise in my head. I didn't want to think about Samantha. I didn't want to think about what I had just lost. I kept myself busy, working, cleaning, taking walks through the city, doing anything I could to avoid facing the truth that I couldn't outrun anymore. But I couldn't avoid it forever. It was on the 5th day after our conversation when I got the call. My phone rang as I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, completely drained. I almost didn't answer it. But then I saw the name on the screen. It was her. I don't know why, but I answered it. Maybe because I wanted answers. Maybe because I wanted to hear her voice again, to know if there was any part of her left that remembered the man I once was to her. "Harold," she said, her voice shaky. I can't do this alone. I don't know how to fix everything. But I need you to understand that this wasn't about you. It wasn't about how I felt about you. It was about me. I lost myself." Her words were fragmented, like she was breaking apart as she spoke. "I can't fix it, Sam," I replied quietly, feeling the finality in my words. "And neither can you. This isn't something that can just be fixed with a phone call. You've hurt me, and no matter how much you regret it now, it doesn't change what's been done." There was silence on the other end, and for a moment, I thought she had hung up. But then I heard her sob. "I'm sorry," she whispered through her tears. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never thought it would come to this. I didn't know what I was doing." The words rang hollow in my ears. I had heard them before, so many times before. The apologies, the excuses, the promises. But now, all they did was remind me of the fact that I had been living in a lie. And no matter how much I loved her, or how much I wanted to believe her, I couldn't go back to that life. "I have to go, Sam," I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. "Take care of yourself." I hung up before she could say anything else. I didn't need to hear it. There was nothing left to say. And as I sat there, phone in hand, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. It was over. For good this time. But the question was, what came next? I had no idea. It's strange how life moves forward even when you feel like everything stopped. It doesn't pause for you to catch your breath, doesn't wait for you to figure it all out. It just keeps going, one foot in front of the other. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure I could keep up. The days following my conversation with Samantha were nothing short of a blur. I couldn't focus on anything. Work was a haze. My mind kept drifting back to her words, to her face, the image of her crying over the phone. It haunted me. But I had made my decision, right? I had to. I had walked away. I couldn't just sit around waiting for her to fix what she had broken. But still, there was this nagging feeling inside me. That sense of loss that wouldn't leave. It was like I had lost part of myself. Not just Samantha, but the life we had built. The future I thought we'd have. I couldn't shake the image of her with him. Mark. The guy she had chosen over me. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see their faces. Her smiling at him the way she hadn't smiled at me in months, maybe longer. And for the first time, I started to question everything. Was it really just about her? Was I so blind to our marriage that I didn't see her slipping away? I tried to bury these thoughts. I tried to move on, but it wasn't easy. The first night I stayed in my new apartment, a small place I'd rented just to have some space, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the walls. It didn't feel like home. It didn't feel like anything. It felt empty, like a room I was just passing through. I didn't know how to fill the void, how to fill the silence, how to fill the gaping hole inside me where she used to be. I couldn't stop thinking about her, but I also couldn't stop thinking about the man I had become in her absence. The man who was too afraid to stand up for himself, too afraid to confront her when I should have. The man who had let everything slip through his fingers. And so, I started doing what any broken man would do. I went out. To bars. To clubs. To places where I could pretend, even if just for a few hours, that I wasn't that man. That I wasn't the one she had discarded, the one she had left behind. I drank more than I should have. I talked to people I didn't know, people who didn't ask questions, who didn't know my name or my past. They just wanted to have a good time, and for a moment, I could forget everything else. But it didn't last. No matter how much I drank, no matter how much I tried to drown out the pain, it always came back. Like a tidal wave crashing over me when I least expected it. That's when I decided to do something I hadn't done in weeks. I went for a walk. It was late, past midnight, the city streets quiet and empty. I needed air. I needed to think. As I walked through the darkened streets, I realized something that had been sitting in the back of my mind for days now. I was never going to get the closure I wanted. I could wait forever for her to come back, for her to realize what she had lost, but it wouldn't change anything. She had made her choice, and no matter how much it hurt, I had to accept it. The truth was, the closure I needed wasn't going to come from her. It had to come from me. That night, I made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to keep running in circles, chasing after something that wasn't mine anymore. I wasn't going to keep torturing myself with the thought of what could have been, what I could have done differently. I had to let go. And so I did. I spent the next few days focused on rebuilding myself. I started going to therapy. I had always told myself I didn't need it, that I could handle everything on my own. But I couldn't. I had to admit that I needed help, that I couldn't heal by myself. The sessions weren't easy. Talking about everything I had been through, opening up to a stranger about my pain. It felt raw. It felt vulnerable. But with each session, I felt a little more like myself, a little more in control. But even as I started to rebuild, the question that haunted me was always there. Could I ever trust again? Could I ever love again? The thought of opening myself up to someone else, of allowing myself to be vulnerable once more, seemed impossible. How could I trust anyone after everything that had happened? How could I let someone in again after the way Samantha had torn me apart? I wasn't sure. But one thing was clear. I couldn't stay stuck in the past. I couldn't keep looking back at what I had lost. If I was going to move forward, I had to let go of the anger, the resentment, the fear. It wasn't easy. It still isn't. But every day, I try to remind myself that life is bigger than this moment, that there is more to the world than the hurt she caused me, than the pain of losing her. I've learned that healing isn't a straight line. It's messy, it's complicated, and it takes time. But that's okay, because I'm learning to be okay with it. And as I took that first step forward, I realized that I didn't need her apology to move on. I didn't need her to fix what was broken. What mattered now was what I chose to do next. What mattered was the life I was going to create for myself, the man I was going to become. And even though it felt like I was starting over from scratch, something inside me told me that maybe this was exactly what I needed. To start fresh. To be someone new. Someone better. The road ahead wasn't clear, but I knew I was finally ready to walk it. The weeks passed, and slowly, I started to feel like I was regaining control over my life. The apartment was starting to feel less like a temporary refuge, and more like a place where I could actually live. I hung up a few paintings, added a couple of plants, and even started cooking for myself again. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel completely lost. I was learning to enjoy my own company, and in a way, I was starting to rebuild my own identity. The person I had become during my marriage had faded away, and now, there was just me, the real me. But of course, even as I started to find my footing, I couldn't escape the nagging thoughts of Samantha. It wasn't about longing for her anymore. It was more about trying to understand what went wrong. I spent a lot of time reflecting on our relationship, picking apart the moments that should have warned me, the moments I ignored because I didn't want to believe the truth. I couldn't help but think, if I had just seen it sooner, would I have been able to fix it? But I had to stop asking myself that question, because it didn't matter. It was done. She had made her choice, and now, I had to make mine. And then, one day, out of nowhere, she reached out again. It was an email. It was short, almost too brief, like she wasn't sure whether she should say anything at all. Harold, I know it's been a while. I don't know if you'll even read this, but I need you to know I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. You probably hate me, but I had to tell you how much I regret everything. I know I can't undo the damage I've done, but I wanted to apologize. I hope you can find peace, even if it's not with me. Sam. I stared at the screen, the words sinking in slowly. My first reaction was anger. Anger that after everything she had put me through, she would think that a simple apology could fix anything. I sat there, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, wondering what I should say, if anything at all. What was there left to say? She had already said everything. And in the end, her apology didn't matter. It couldn't fix the betrayal, the lies, or the way she had made me feel like I wasn't enough. But still, I couldn't bring myself to ignore it. I took a deep breath and started typing. My hands moved almost automatically, my emotions rushing to the surface as I typed the words that had been weighing on me for so long. Sam, I don't know what you expect from me, but I can't keep doing this. I've spent enough time wondering what went wrong, blaming myself for things I couldn't control. I can't keep holding on to something that's already gone. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, but I'm done. For both our sakes, I'm moving on. I wish you nothing but peace. I paused for a moment, staring at the screen. For the first time in a long while, I felt the weight of what I had just written. It wasn't an angry response. It wasn't a desperate plea for closure. It was simply the truth. The final truth. I wasn't going to keep dragging myself through this. I wasn't going to keep hurting over something I couldn't change. I hit send. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't felt in what felt like forever, relief. Not relief from her, not relief from the pain she had caused, but relief from the constant cycle of regret and doubt that had been swirling in my mind. I had finally let it go. It was no longer up to her to fix things. It was up to me. The days after sending that email were strange. I didn't hear back from her. I didn't expect to. The silence was heavy, but it was also a comfort. I had closed the door on that chapter of my life, and there was no reason to reopen it. I started living again, really living. I picked up old hobbies I had forgotten about, painting, writing, even going out and meeting new people. And as I did, something strange happened. I began to feel like myself again. Not the version of myself who had been waiting for someone else to make him happy, but the version of myself who was strong, independent, and capable of moving forward. I remember one evening, about a month after I sent that email, sitting at a bar with some friends. They were talking about their jobs, their lives, the usual things. But for once, I wasn't distracted. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a place in the world again. And I realized I was happy, not just content, but happy. And then, as if fate had a cruel sense of humor, I saw her. Samantha. She walked into the bar, just as I was taking a sip of my drink. I recognized her instantly, though she didn't see me at first. She was with a group of people, laughing, carefree. She looked different, lighter, almost like the weight of the world had been lifted from her shoulders. And for a brief moment, I felt a pang of jealousy, of longing. But it was fleeting, because I knew what I had to do. I stood up, excusing myself from the table, and made my way to the door. She didn't notice me, and I didn't want her to. The old me would have frozen, would have stayed, hoping for some kind of recognition, some kind of acknowledgement. But the new me, no, the stronger me, simply walked away. I didn't need her to see me. I didn't need her to apologize again. I had already forgiven her. And more importantly, I had forgiven myself. As I stepped out of the bar into the cool night air, a sense of peace washed over me. It was like the weight I had been carrying for so long had finally been lifted. The past few months had been a whirlwind of pain, confusion, and regret, but in that moment, I realized something important. I was okay. I was more than okay. I was free. I walked down the street with a new sense of purpose, the city around me buzzing with life, and I felt like I was finally a part of it again. I had spent so long drowning in the past, letting it control me, but now, I had reclaimed my own story. It wasn't about Samantha anymore. It wasn't about the betrayal or the lies or the heartbreak. It was about me, about who I was becoming and the life I was going to create for myself. The next few months flew by. I threw myself into my work, focused on my health, and spent more time with my friends, people who truly cared about me, who saw me for who I was, not the person I had been before. I started taking risks again, stepping out of my comfort zone, and embracing the possibilities that life had to offer. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. One day, out of nowhere, I received an email. It was from an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years, Maggie, a woman I'd known back in college. She had always been kind and easy to talk to, someone who had supported me when things were tough in the past. We had lost touch after graduation, But reading her message reminded me of the person I used to be, before all the heartache, before everything fell apart. Her email was simple. Hey, Harold, it's been way too long. Let's grab coffee sometime. I'd love to catch up. For the first time in a while, I felt something stir inside me. It wasn't a desperate need to fill the void left by Samantha. It was excitement. The kind of excitement I had been missing for so long. The kind that came from making connections, from meeting new people, from experiencing life outside of the pain I had been wrapped up in. I replied almost immediately, agreeing to meet up with her the next weekend. And that coffee date turned into another and another. Slowly, over time, Maggie became someone I could talk to about anything. She didn't try to replace Samantha. She wasn't trying to fix me or save me. She was just there. She listened, supported, and offered a kindness I hadn't realized I'd been missing. She was someone who reminded me of the beauty in simplicity, in genuine connection. As the months passed, Maggie and I grew closer. We talked about everything, our dreams, our pasts, our fears, and our hopes for the future. She didn't rush anything, and neither did I. We were both careful, aware of the past wounds we carried, but we also saw something in each other worth exploring. I never imagined that I would find love again, at least not in the way I had experienced it before. But with Maggie, it felt natural, like something that had always been there, just waiting for the right moment to bloom. We took things slow, allowing ourselves to enjoy each moment without rushing ahead. And as time passed, I realized something remarkable. I had healed. The day Maggie and I decided to officially start dating felt like the culmination of a long journey. A journey of self-discovery, healing, and rediscovery. It wasn't perfect, and it didn't come without its own set of challenges, but it was real, and it was mine. I had learned, the hard way, that love wasn't just about finding someone to share your life with. It was about finding yourself first, understanding who you are, what you need, and what you're willing to give. I had done that, and I had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more aware of the life I wanted to build moving forward. And as I sat with Maggie one evening, watching the sunset and talking about the future, I realized that everything I had gone through had led me to this moment. A moment of peace, a moment of new beginnings, and a moment of joy. Life, it seemed, had a funny way of surprising you. Just when you think you've lost everything, you find yourself on the edge of something new, something better. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the future. I was excited for it. I had let go of the past, and in doing so, I had made room for a future full of possibilities. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift of all.